into financial and investment planning, offering practical advice on how to make the most of your savings and investments. Their guidance will empower you to make informed decisions that aligns towards your retirement goals. And lastly, colleagues, we are joined by a wellness expert who will focus on the importance of maintaining physical, mental, and emotional well-being during retirement. Retirement is not just about financial security. It's about living a healthy life, a fulfilling life of wellness. We will look at strategies to help you stay active, engage, and be joyful in this new phase of your life. This is a new beginning. As I said before, I say it again, we've only just begun. So as we embark on this journey, today I encourage you to engage actively. Ask as many questions, take notes. This webinar is designed to equip you with the knowledge and the tools that you require to retire gracefully and enjoy the fruits of your labor. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for lending me your ears, and most of all, lending me your hearts to be part of something great. So let's make the most of this opportunity to learn, grow, and prepare for a rewarding today and an awesome tomorrow. We've only just begun. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rampart, and thank you to Ntate Mekwa with that warm welcome. I would like to appreciate that when we, as a chief directorate, sent some messages as to whether this was a topic that would appeal to our clients, and the response that we received left us with a fair understanding that this was going to be a topic that is necessary and that we are going to enjoy. And with those words from Mr. Rampart, I have no doubt that we are going to learn and we are going to gain more knowledge so that we can shift some of the things that we're doing in a different way so that we can improve on the blind spots and be able to reach our destination in a better place. I am going to introduce our first speaker, our official guest speaker, Mr. Obakeng Moumakwe, who is from the GEPF with a knowledge and extensive experience of about 18 years in administering the pension fund. He is responsible for 7 national departments, and amongst other things, he oversees education and training for HR and GEPF membership. He facilitates strategies for members to understand entry and exit strategies on the pension side of their contribution, and also provides comprehensive knowledge and education on proposed legislation around the GEPF fund. Tate Obakeng, we appreciate you that you've made the time to come and share the information. Over to you, Tate Moumakwe.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I appreciate the invite. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to waste your time. We have a very limited slot, so we will dive right into the understanding of the GEPF. Now, the introduction, ladies and gentlemen, goes, the Government Employees Pension Fund was founded upon the GEP law of 1996 as amended. The GEPF is what we call a defined benefit pension fund. This is a fund where benefits are defined in terms of the rules, Benefits are generally guaranteed and are not dependent on the investment returns of the fund or even on the level of employer contributions, which simply allays members' fears when it comes to investments, when it comes to the GEPF and the growth of the GEPF's portfolio. With the GEPF, the rules govern how we calculate your pension fund, and the rise and fall of the stock market or any investments by the GEPF does not affect how your benefits are calculated. That is what that paragraph simply means in layman's terms. Now, the overview says who decides what benefits you receive. Your benefits are defined in terms of the rules, as I've just explained, which are issued in terms of the same law, GEP of 1996. This law may only be amended by Parliament, and the rules regarding benefits may only be amended after negotiations in the PSCBC or other relevant bargaining structures. How your benefits are determined rests on three key variables. The first one being your exit reason. In order for us to calculate your benefits, we need to know how you are exiting service. Like I've explained, the benefits are calculated in accordance to certain variables. So one of them being your exit reason. If you are exiting through resignation, there's a different formula of calculation. If you are retiring with more than 10 years of service, because it calls for a monthly pension component plus a gratuity that is payable to you once off, there's a different formula of calculation versus that of resignation, which is a once-off calculation. Your length of pensionable service is extremely important. The longer you contribute, the more money you will receive at the end of the day. So this resigning and cashing out your benefits, you must know that every time you do so, you reset your pensionable service, meaning you start from scratch. So there are people that have been resigning and cashing out, and then ultimately when they understand that the length of your pensionable service forms part of the calculation variables, they then understand that they should have not cashed out and invoked something called an interdepartmental transfer where applicable. The third and final one is your 2 years average salary. When the GEPF calculates your pension, we use the average of the last 2 years' salary notches. We do not look at your entire tenure to calculate your pension, which is an advantage because let's say, as an example, you start contributing and you continue contributing for the entirety of your tenure. Let's say it's 36 years. And for 34 of the 36, you were at the lowest possible position, remuneration-wise. If at some point in the last 2 years, you are promoted to maybe a director, as an example, when the GEPF calculates your pension, we would look at the average of the last 2 years in which you were a director, which means effectively we will calculate and pay you as if you were a director from day one of contributions. I trust that is clear. We now come to membership. What constitutes our membership to the GEPF? It has to do with our conditions that we were appointed under. There are various conditions of service. You get people who are employed under the Public Service Act, and then you get members who are employed under your uniformed acts, as an example, correctional services or SAPS or even the Defense Force. So these conditions determine something that is extremely important, which is your age of retirement officially. Now, the GEPF's official retirement age, in accordance to the GEP law of 1996, is 60. But for those who are employed under the Public Service Act, your conditions of service allow for you to contribute past that age of 60 to the age of 65. So the conditions will determine what your retirement age is. But for those who are employed under your uniformed acts, like your SAPS members, their contributions cannot exceed their 60th year. That means by the age of 60, if you're employed under uniformed acts, you must retire. It's a mandatory age of retirement. We also have something called nomination of beneficiaries, which is a way for your beneficiaries to receive a gratuity upon the passing of yourself as a member. Now, These once-off payments are made in accordance to the allocations on the nomination form, which is the WP 1002. We also have purchase of service, which is a way of improving your benefits by purchasing additional years of service. This is you giving the GEPF money or paying to have a certain period, which is done in retrospect, meaning backwards, recognized as pensionable service. Now, we continue to expand on the nomination form under this slide. It says, you may nominate any person or entity to receive the part of your gratuity benefits which are payable upon your passing as a member. So the nomination form, there's a lot of misunderstandings to it. This is why it was seen fit to expand on the nomination form on a slide of its own. Now, some people say you are not allowed to nominate a child who is over the age of 21, and that is incorrect. The age of a nominee does not play it does not factor in when we pay out when it comes to your nomination. So we don't care how old your nominees are. If you wish to nominate your 90-year-old grandmother, you can do so if you wish. Now, we can also nominate an entity. There are people without any family whatsoever, no siblings, no parents, no cousins, no aunties or grandmothers or grandfathers at all. So they have the option to nominate an entity. I know of a gentleman in Cape Town who nominated his cycling club as an entity. So it is possible. You may amend your nomination form as and when you feel it is necessary for you to do so, especially in scenarios where changes happen when it comes to birth, death, and especially divorce. A newly completed nomination form will cancel out the old one. So effectively, you can change your nomination form from day to day. Human Resources and the GEPF as departments are bound by strict confidentiality rules, and we may not divulge what is in your nomination form. So it is a secret between yourself, HR, and us as the GEPF. It continues to say, please note, the fund may overrule a nomination form in accordance to the Act. A will is not a nomination form. Therefore, because your GEPF pension fund does not form part of your estate, you may not in your will instruct the GEPF how to pay your benefits after you have passed on. So you need a nomination form, which is a will for your GEPF pension, but you, I suppose, also require a last will and testament for your estate, which the GEPF does not form part of. Contributions, ladies and gentlemen, all members, regardless of your remuneration package, we all contribute 7.5% of our monthly basic salary. The employer, on the other hand, contributes in accordance to our conditions of service. Now, if you're employed under the Public Service Act, all of us employed under the Public Service Act, the employer contributes a 13% of your basic salary, versus that of members who are employed under the uniformed acts like your SAPS, SANDF, and Correctional Services, even NIA. Their contributions from the employers are 16%, which is 3% higher. So our total contributions for public service appointees are 20.5%, which is a high rate of contribution. But for those members who are employed under the Uniformed Acts, their contributions amount to 23.5%, which is an extremely high rate of contribution. Even if you look at private pension contributions, we contribute at an extremely high rate. At the bottom, it continues to say the employer has made a commitment to ensure that the funding level of the GEPF remains at 90%. That simply means, in accordance to the regulations or the regulator of pensions, a minimum of 90% of the fund's resources must be maintained, so that if anything happens to the fund and the fund maybe collapses, we are able to pay a bare minimum of 90% of the members' contributions, 90%. But the GEPF is currently, last time I checked, we were sitting at over 110% funding level, which makes the GEPF a fund of choice. That means we are sitting in a very strong financial position. Hence, the finance minister was actually even considering taking a payment holiday when it came to the contributions, because the GEPF is in such a strong financial position. We come to the various ways where a member can exit service and access their pension fund. The first one being resignation. You can also terminate your service through discharge, retirement, death, and divorce. Other attachments and benefits. The GEPF offers funeral benefits as a benefit. Funeral benefits was instituted in 2002 on the 1st of December. Currently, for the member and the member's spouse, we pay 20,000 Rand minus tax. All benefits payable from the GEPF are taxable in accordance to the Tax Act of South Africa. Therefore, funeral benefits for yourself and your spouse is 20,000 minus tax. For any child, it would be 8,000 Rand minus tax. Just as interesting factoid, if you and your spouse both belong to the government employees pension fund and you perish, God forbid, together at the same time, for applications of funeral benefits are required. So under yourself alone, there are two. There is one application for the 20,000 Rand for the death of yourself as a member, and one 20,000 Rand application for the death of your spouse. Therefore, it reciprocates. It will be 2 per person. That means it will be 4 minus tax. We also have something called child pension. Child pension was introduced on the 1st of June in 2018, my apologies. Child pension, ladies and gentlemen, takes over from orphans pension, and we now pay child pension on a monthly basis. This is not 50% of a member's monthly pension upon the perishing of a member. It is up to 25% depending on the number of kids. Child pension is paid from the date of the member's death up until the child is of the age of 22, regardless of whether the child is schooling or not. We also have spouse's pension, which is payable at 50% of the member's monthly pension at the time of death, or it can be enhanced if a member passes on retirement. At the age of retirement, you have the choice to enhance the spouse's pension to 75%. For those of you who love their spouses so much that the free 50% from the GEPF as a benefit to your surviving spouse would not be enough, you are permitted to enhance the spouse's pension with an additional 25%. But the enhanced amount, or the 25% extra, will come from your own pocket. Therefore, you will make a further choice for the GEPF to reduce your monthly pension or reduce your lump sum at the time of retirement to compensate for the additional 25%. Please note, should you make that choice to enhance, you cannot unmake it if your spouse passes on before you. This means you will have elected to lose money and it cannot be recovered. Even if you remarry, the spouse, the incoming new spouse, will be paid at 50%, which is the default. Therefore, make this choice knowing what you're doing, because the only person I ever supported when they said they're enhancing was a gentleman who passed on 6 months after that consult from leukemia. So he was making sure that his surviving spouse received that additional amount. We also come to medical aid subsidy. The GEPF subsidizes your medical aid at 75% post-retirement. The amount that is payable is 1,801 Rands if it's just yourself on the medical aid. But should it be that you have even one dependent, it is doubled to 3,602 Rands. Please note that it is contingent on a few things for you to qualify for the medical aid. You must be a main member of a registered medical aid scheme at retirement and be subsidized. You must also be the main member of that registered medical aid scheme for 12 months before your exit date in order for you to qualify. This simply means in your last year before retirement, you cannot change medical aids because we will require a medical aid certificate or a document that confirms from your medical aid that you've been a member for more than 12 months. If you are not, you will forfeit this medical aid subsidy. Divorce, ladies and gentlemen, deductions thereof are done under the Act, the Divorce Act, under Section 7 of 8 of the Divorce Act of 1979. Divorce deductions may be done if we receive a compliant court order, which is a divorce decree and settlement from a court, which stipulates there is an allocation of your pension, whether it's a fixed amount or a percentage, we will deduct that amount. Maintenance is also the same. We will deduct maintenance upon receiving the court order, which is the maintenance order that is from the court. Please note, I elaborate again, all benefits payable from the GEPF are taxable in accordance to the Tax Act of the land. Debt can also be advised by the employer. Traditionally, the GEPF will honor any contractual debt from the employer if they indicate it, and the member also acknowledges the debt on a debt acknowledgement form. But it is key to all HR to understand that the GEPF maintains that we are not debt collectors. So there are debts that we will not recover. And if it happens that the debt was not recovered by some sort of clerical error, we cannot be held liable for not deducting debt. I hope that that is clear. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes my presentation with regards to GEPF benefits. I do appreciate the chance that I was offered for this engagement, and please continue on. My colleague, Mr. Justice Monareng, is busy answering any inquiries that could arise online currently during my presentation. I'm also accompanied by the portfolio manager, which is Florina Mukotedi, and we do appreciate your audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ntate Obakeng. That presentation for many of us is a reminder of some of the aspects of being an employee and facing the reality of changes that are taking place in our lives every day, where we sometimes will miss updating some of this information that is very critical until we realize when we have to leave the organization that we never actually submitted most of the critical and important information. Colleagues, we have a chat platform. If you go to the bottom of your screen, you will see that we have a chat platform. Feel free if you have inquiries. I've also posted there to say if you have comments, clarity-seeking questions as we present the different topics. When you are able to submit your comment, we will make efforts to get some of the responses that we can be able to address on the platform. And if we are not able, we will follow up if you leave your details on the chat box. And I am going to hand over to Nolo and Jay and see if at all we have any questions on the platform that might be related to the current presentation that we've just received. Over to you, lady and a gentleman.
Gracefully, so far, I'm not seeing anything on the chat box. Colleagues, please use the chat box. You're more than welcome to post your questions and we'll be able to assist you. Thank you.
The questions are under the
I
Q&A.
know, yes, there is a Q&A a platform where we have almost 30 comments and or questions that are there on your side. If you can please just open them and see if at all we can address some of them with the 5 minutes that is left for this presentation. Thank you.
Chairperson?
Right. There is questions on the chat box. Sorry, because I'm on the side of the panel. I'm struggling to switch, but please, colleagues from GPF, kindly attend to those questions. Thank you so much.
Chairperson?
Yes, Ajay?
Thank you. We will ensure that the chat box remains open. So if there are concerns or queries that people do have, we feel rest assured that we'll be able to respond to them even the cycle of the entire webinar. So the person that's with Obakeng and his colleagues are more than willing to assist with anything that the colleagues have to post, specifically that's aligned to the presentation that's on today. Thank you.
Okay, Jay, I think we are in agreement, and we are saying if you go to more under Q&A, there are questions that are being loaded there. We are now at, unless on my side, I'm viewing
Sis Willie,
a
sorry
different.
to interject. I'm seeing a comment here from Elsa, and she's saying, why is the GPF app not updated to current dates? Another one is saying, do you have to belong to a particular medical aid to get a maximum subsidy? In which circumstances will the fund overrule a nomination? Another one was
Sorry,
posted.
Lola, can you please come closer to the mic? We can't hear you.
Okay. Let me just. Am I audible, Kusam?
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So I'm just going to read few ones that I think maybe Obakeng can try to answer on the chat box. It says from Ms. Lepan, please clarify membership. Are you still a member of the GPF after you have retired? And will you receive the benefits until death?
Yes, you're still a member of the GEPF. You're just a pensioner. There's two types of members of the GEPF. You have active members and you also have pensioners. Therefore, you are still a member of the GEPF and our monthly pension is payable for life. Our oldest living pension is 108 years old. So yes, until you die.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Obakeng. And I think this one is also pressing. Why is the GPF not updated? The app is not updated.
The app currently is under construction. I trust that members will appreciate that this is a new initiative for the GEPF. We are taking the electronic method. So we are trying to evolve. The app has had problems in the past 6 months or so, but we are assured by our CIO that the progress is ongoing. So as soon as the app is up and running, it will be communicated to all the members. Thank you.
Obakeng, I think this is an important consideration. I see a thing from Kurt here who's talking about he is single and he wants to know what happens in the event of him passing on. Will his kids still receive the pension?
Okay.
It says he's single What happens to my monthly pension when I die? Does it go back to the
Okay.
fund when I'm nominated beneficiaries? Do they get the monthly benefits?
The monthly benefits that are payable are child pension for children under the age of 18 up until the age of 22. So it is payable only up until the age of 22 for the kids. But for a spouse's pension will be either 50 or 75%, which is payable for life. Yes, so that does go on. I'm going to defer to my colleague, Mr. Justice Monareng, to continue answering questions together with Miss Florina Mokotedi.
Okay,
All right.
can I just interject a little bit? Sorry, Ubakeng. I'm considering the time and I am seeing the flood of questions that are coming through, and I would like to make a suggestion. At the moment, we are standing at about maybe 60 questions or clarity-seeking questions, comments. Can I please make an appeal to say we have an answering a view box on the system. So while others will be answering verbally, can we also type in those questions that need a short answer, like the issue of the website and so on? Just type an answer there, and all the other attendees can watch the QA platform so that they can be able to get their answers there. Thank you very much. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, colleagues. My name is Justice Monareng. With Obakeng and Florina. I'm going to be assisting in responding to some of the questions that have been posted on the chat box. We are trying to respond to the chat box, but it keeps throwing us back and forth when new questions are being posted. But we will do our best to respond to the questions that we can. Now, one of the questions that I saw in the chat box, which I was trying to respond to, is with regards to medical aid subsidy. Let me clarify the qualification when it comes to medical aid subsidy. So we currently subsidize all medical aid schemes, even those that do not belong to GEMS. If they meet the criteria, they will be subsidized. Now, what is the criteria? For you to qualify for the subsidy, if you exit due to medical retirement, which we call medical ill health retirement, you must have a public service years of 10 years at least as a minimum, and must have been a main member of a medical aid scheme in the last 12 months for you to meet the criteria. Now, in case of normal retirement, death, severance packages, you need a total government service of 15 years at least. And when we talk about total government service, it doesn't have to be contributing service. Whether you were a contributing member to the GPF or not, that's still recognized for purpose of medical subsidy. So you must have at least 15 years in case of normal retirement, severance packages, and death. In case of death, if you pass on, your spouse or partner who was a dependent on your medical aid scheme may also qualify for the subsidy if you met the requirements. Okay, so we subsidize other schemes outside of GEMS. Now, the other questions that I picked up here, apologies about that. I was asked to show my ugly face. I hope it's not gonna scare my colleagues. Okay, so let me just jump to the other question.
Then while you're moving to the next question, just to note that if you're busy responding to a question, it does sort of jump around. You just need to scroll back to where you were typing and you can continue from there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see a question in no particular order. Is it true that you can now retire at 55 without penalties? So the GPF is a pension fund. Whether you retire with penalties or not, no penalties is not determined by us, but by your employer, or the arrangement between the employer and employee. So in our case, any benefits that are paid in line with the rules, with the provisions of the rules. So we don't waiver penalties for anyone unless the employer instructs us to do so. So if there's any penalty waiver, it has to come through from your employer. We don't make a call to say we will penalize or not penalize any employees at any particular point. So that decision must be communicated from government through your employers if there's any such waiver of penalties. Yeah, I see that question comes up a lot. So yes, maybe let me just try to elaborate more on that point so that it becomes clearer. There's been a lot of discussions with regard to early retirement without penalty. If there's any decision that government has made with regards to that, the decision will be communicated by government. When I say government, we are a pension fund which administers benefits on behalf of government, departments, and institutions. But we are not government. So government, we are talking about DPSA and National Treasury. They will make such pronouncements if there is any approval of early retirement without penalty. Therefore, once such announcements have been made, we will implement accordingly. But for now, I'm not aware of any approval that has been granted. Okay.
Okay. All right. Ntate Munareng. I'm just mindful of my time. We have gone over 2 minutes for the allocated time for your presentation. And I would like to make an appeal to you and Tate Mumakwe to please remain on the platform, because I can really see that just on this one presentation, we are sitting at 88 comments online. So which means the presentation really has been received very well and has triggered a lot of thoughts, which we do not want to leave the platform without clarifying at least most of them. So if you would allow me, can we park it at the moment? And then if while we are loading the other presentation, you can continue to type some of the answers where you could. And then where you need further elaboration, we can be able to take it up when we are now at the end of the program, if we have some time. Is that okay?
No, that's not a problem. We'll gladly do so. Thank you.
All right. No, thank you so much. Thank you very much for the presentation, our GEPF colleagues. And we are now going to move to our next speaker, who is, I just need to get my bearings on this one as we
I think there's a bit of a challenge right now, but we are attending to it.
Camera, please.
Gracefully, are you sorted?
Yes, we are getting sorted. Just 1 second.
Congratulations. All right.
There we are. Thank you very much. We're going to go to our second presentation, and our presentation will be from Ms. Nana Kese, who is an admitted attorney, a fiduciary expert, and a legal advisor and a specialist at ABSA. She's got 12 years of experience having worked in different sectors like South African Airways, Nedbank, Old Mutual, and now ABSA. Her background spans multiple facets of the different industries that I've just mentioned, and he's got a very strong foundation in law and in business. That is why we felt that, you know, we all during our life of working use the banks, and sometimes there are hidden advantages more than sometimes disadvantages that we can earn in terms of preparation for saving, for planning, and ensuring that our well-being in terms of finance is looked after. So I'm going to hand over to her to can take us through the presentation that she has prepared for us, and we can do the same thing. As she is presenting, if there are any questions, please use the QA section or the chat box to have your questions aligned there so that we can use a few minutes of your time to answer those questions and comments if there are any. Ms. Nanakese, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. There we go. If I can have that just enlarging it a bit. Okay. Thank you, colleagues. If I can just move on to the very first slide. Thank you. Okay, so what you're seeing in front of you here is basically the Maslow hierarchy of needs. Maslow basically has said to us that this is a theory that is based on the fact that our desires and motivations basically heavily influences our lives. We can apply this theory that we see in front of us here to financial planning. So basically, our needs starts very, very simply in terms of needing, air, water, food, clothing, and rest. These are very basic needs. Obviously, in order to achieve these needs, we need a stable income. We need a stable cash flow. The thing is, that's not all we need as human beings. So all of our desires are eventually to get to the very pinnacle of that triangle that you see there, which is eventually self-actualization, asking ourselves questions like, what are we doing here on earth? What is our purpose? What is my full potential? Am I ever going to reach it? According to this theory and the stats that they have come up with, about 2% of the world actually are able to reach that self-actualization point. So we think of people like, Nelson Mandela, or we think of, Mahatma Gandhi. Those people are the people whose needs then became how they can contribute to humanity and not just their own personal needs. This theory suggests that intrinsically, we are all wired to basically to want that for ourselves to reach our full potential. But usually, because of our financial decisions, we are bogged down so much that we are unable to usually reach that pinnacle because we are distracted by a number of things, whether it's material gain, whether it's seeking approval of people that we know, people that don't matter. So we are hardly ever able to reach that pinnacle. So we are here to challenge you today to say, if you plan your finances in a way that matters, you are able to reach that pinnacle that you want to reach. So as I spoke on about earlier, our basic needs would be your water, air, food, clothing. We want that. We need that to survive. So we need a basic income and cash flow in order to achieve that. Once we have then achieved that level, what we then want is obviously to feel safe. We want to be assured that the stable income that we have is going to last forever. We want to be assured that our employment is going to be permanent for a while, at least up until a point where we want to change it. What we then have to do, the next step suggests, in order to keep the safety, is then to invest in things like life insurance, health insurance, so that if anything goes wrong, we do not risk our basic needs like the need for food and water. If we find ourselves in a health crisis and we are unable to have health insurance that's going to make us feel healthier again, then there's no way that we're not going to now come back to the basic need of wanting food, shelter, and clothing. And then it keeps us further and further away from our true potential, which is the very first pinnacle, which is a self actualization need. And then the very next need is our need for belonging. So this is friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. These needs are needs where once we feel financially stable enough, once we're able to have enough money at the end of the month, we're able to indulge in this. If you are busy trying to make ends meet, that is when, unfortunately, we come up with silly excuses where someone has invited you to a birthday party, for example, where you say, I can't come because of A, B, C, and D. The reason might be as simple as you not having, money to buy a present or that sort of thing. It robs you of, your connection with other people, with your need to feel tightly connected to your family and your friends. So we're saying, in order to make sure that these needs carry on, some of the things that you can have in place then is your emergency funding. So have at least 3 months worth of money available so that if anything happens to risk your employment or your stable income, you have a buffer of at least 3 months to carry on with what you want to do. And then the very next one is the self-esteem needs, which is our dream house, our dream car, exotic holiday. It is not to say that we cannot have those things if we plan properly, but we need to make sure that we do that intentionally. And for not climbing up this hierarchy in terms of needs, because they feed a need that's not necessary, they find themselves only thinking about this esteem needs, perhaps at retirement. That's when people want to now renovate their house into the beautiful home they have always dreamed of. That's when now they want to buy the dream exotic. They want to go on the exotic holiday or buy that dream car. By then, you may be taking risks that you probably should not be taking at that age in your retirement, because if you secure yourself that dream car, if you secure yourself that dream house, it very well could happen then you don't have, future income, to put it that way, to fulfill all these other needs that you have. So we're saying, start planning for these things intentionally now. If you want to have a car at the time that you retire, plan for it now. Be intentional about it now. Speak to a financial advisor perhaps about those things now. Plan to say, I am 40 years old now, I'm 50 years old now. In the next few years, when I do retire, I want to buy myself a Mercedes worth 500,000 Rand. That professional will then assist you right now to be able to reach that goal effectively and intentionally so that it doesn't impact your livelihood at that time of retirement, which is the critical moment. If we can just go to the next slide, please. Okay. So this is where the final step is the self-actualization. So this is where you are reaching your full potential, where you are trying to leave a legacy, where you are trying to communicate to the world that you had much more to offer than just basically being alive. So our solution for this is basically to make sure that your needs and your wants that you had in your life culminate into something that's worth a legacy that you can then leave on to your beneficiaries at the end. So one way that we can look at this is estate planning, essentially. Excuse me. One way that we can look at legacy planning is through estate planning. A very important tool that we use here is, for example, a will. I am just going to tell you a quick story. We cannot, perhaps in the comments, people can leave their answers on what they think the answer is. So you have here a single mother let me use a single father. I feel like single fathers get a rap too often. So let's use a single father. So you have a single father who basically gives birth to, not gives birth, but basically has a child. And, the mother basically just dumps the child on this single father, and then they run off. And, he has to fend for himself and this child. He breaks his back his whole life for this child. And then he's able to put this child through, university. The child's livelihood was expensive, but they're able to make it through. And then this child becomes a very important person. They make a whole lot of money. And then one day they are traveling together with the father. So this successful child is traveling together with the father in a car, and they get themselves into a car accident. So remember, this child did not leave any children behind. It's just the two of them against the world, basically. They're traveling, coming from some award show that awarded them greatly, and now they both get into an accident and they both pass away. The question here is, who is going to inherit all the assets that this child has acquired? Because now the father is dead. So if I can just have answers in there, but I'll give the answer. So in essence, because the father is gone, the person that's going to inherit everything likely will be the mother, if she's still alive, who has never been in this child's life, who has never paid a dime towards this person's life. And the reason being that in South Africa, your closest blood relative will always inherit. So if you do not have a will in place that dictates that when you die, A, B, C, and D person must inherit your assets, that's what's going to happen. Your closest blood relative, who sometimes you've never heard of, if they are close enough. So in this case, the person who passed away did not have any kids. Their other parent is gone. So effectively, the closest blood relative is this mother who they've never seen before. Most likely, she's the one that's going to inherit everything. So we come here to say, plan your estate so that these unforeseen things do not happen. Now, a will is just one of those things that has to be done a certain way. Unfortunately, the law has not kept pace with technology, so it's very archaic in the way that we have to do it. A will has to be written. So these days, perhaps someone might think you can leave a quick voice note to say, if I die, A, B, C, and D must inherit the car, they must inherit this, must inherit that. That will not be deemed as a will in and of itself. It has to be written down on paper and originally signed. So that is the basic definition that we have here. It's a written document where a person leaves behind his or her assets to specified beneficiaries. It's important that you specify who the beneficiaries are. You can see a class of people, for example, my children, but other than that, you need to state the name of that person that you are leaving that asset to. Because more often than not, what happens is if you don't specify, these people's names and just leave it as my children, it becomes very muddied in terms of, are you speaking of your adopted children? Are you speaking of children of your present marriage? Are you speaking of your previous marriage children? So you need to specify for us which children that you are talking about exactly. All right. So why a will? Why is it important that you have a will in place? So you get to appoint an executor of your choice, right? If you basically die and you don't have a will in place, an executor will be appointed for you. So in this case, it will be a family member, perhaps, or it will be someone who's not very well versed in what they're doing. So if your estate happened to be under 250,000 Rand, the Master of the High Court will give you what they call a letter of authority, which will then allow you to go on and wind up that estate. Other than that, if it's over 250,000 Rand, you have to go seek the assistance of a professional. So that's a trust company or an attorney or even an accountant to assist you in that case. So we're saying have your will done now so that you don't burden your family with the decision of having to make that choice. And also, as I spoke about earlier, in terms of appointment of heirs of your choice, if you don't have a will in place, the heirs will be appointed for you, which in this case will be your closest blood relative. But perhaps even if you don't have a closest blood relative, maybe you would rather it goes to your church, you'd rather it goes to a foundation that you care about. Once again, speaking to the Maslow theory, you want to leave a legacy to who it matters, not people that you have never heard of, like a distant uncle or something like that. There's also the distribution of your assets according to your wishes. If you don't have a will in place, you can't say, for example, okay, out of my 4 children, I know I have the youngest child who is, perhaps a girl. You don't want her to maybe one day get into a situation where she's reliant on someone she must not rely on. You want to empower that child. You want to perhaps have that child be the one that you want to leave your the main house to. You need to have a will so that you can decide, basically, in this instance, what must happen there. What happens usually when people don't have wills is then that everything is divided equally amongst the closest blood relatives that are left. So the formula goes like this. It will first go to your children first. If you don't have any children, then it will go to your parents, your mother, your father. If you don't have any parents, it will go to your brother and your sisters. If there's no brothers and sisters, then it will go to your nieces and your nephews. So it's always the closest blood relatives. And of course, as we know, family dynamics are not always as we desire them to be. So if you have this thing in place, you are able to then pass on that legacy once again, as I said earlier, to the people who you deem fit to carry on that legacy for you. And also, we also have the interest of the minor children here, in the sense that sometimes you have a minor child who you don't know what must happen, basically, if something happens to them, something happens to you. In that will, you can express then who you want to appoint as a guardian for that child. I must just caution you that we get many, many clients who sometimes, when they are appointing guardianship, so the father is very much alive or the mother is very much alive, but then they will say, I want my sister, my grandmother, my mother, I want whoever else other than the parent to be the guardian of this child. I just want to just caution you that if the person is the natural father or mother of that child, they will always be the natural guardian. You cannot take that guardianship away from them. So if you are appointing someone else other than that person, what you are saying is that in the absence of that natural guardian, this is who you're appointing. But unless that person has done something very, very wrong, whether they're in jail or they are found to, abuse drugs or something like that, the court will be very, very slow in trying to take away that kind of guardianship from that person. So just keep that in mind. We also have creating a testamentary trust in terms of your will as well. So that's one thing a will also allows you to do. So this is also another way to leave a legacy. If you leave an asset to a child who's 4 years old, and if you have not set up a trust in place, it will simply just go to the Guardians Fund. And the Guardians Fund, usually one doesn't have much control in terms of, how you liaise around it. There will be a guardian that's appointed from your family who liaises between the child and the Guardian Fund. This has been known to cause, corruption issues, mismanagement, colluding between officials, and that sort of thing. So a testamentary trust might be something that you want to maybe consider to extend your legacy in that way. All right. Okay. So I'm also wanting to touch on living wills as well, because we also get this question in the industry a lot. So living wills are very, very different from the testamentary wills that I just spoke about. Living wills, basically, they are legally recognized in South Africa, although they're not specifically governed by any legislation. So basically, it has more to do with your medical treatment than your estate. So this is something that an agreement that you have with your, your physician or your GP, to say if anything happens to me and if I find myself in a vegetative state, or if I am terminally ill and I can't speak for myself and that sort of thing, this is what must happen to basically my body. So what must happen to your person? So it doesn't have much to do with your state. There are some people who want us to put this information in wills and stuff in the industry, but usually we advise that you have this conversation with your medical practitioner and have your family also know it. Because a lot of the times when people die or when people are unwell, no one really will ask to see the will. People only see the will when the person has died. So if you are giving instructions on what must happen to your living body while you are still alive, then it's best to give that instruction to someone who's also alive, which is in this case would be your doctor. But if you're going to leave it where, for example, you're in a situation where you can't speak for yourself, you're vegetative, no one is going to know that you've given an instruction in a separate will that's being held by any institution on what must happen to your mortal body. All right. Okay. And then another thing here is the power of attorney. So a power of attorney, basically what it does then is an agreement that you have between you and another to say you can handle my financial affairs or you can handle my legal affairs. It can be either general or specific. So you can say, perhaps maybe you are overseas and you're handling affairs in South Africa. So you can give a specific power of attorney to say, I am busy in the middle of concluding a sale, whether it's a house or whatever, and then you're giving that person authority to say, you can act on my behalf, you can make decisions on my behalf, you can sign things on my behalf, that sort of thing. Or you can even give it generally in terms of your general life, in your financial decision making and that sort of thing. So in this case, will be people who are perhaps, lacking the capacity at the time to do such things. So they can sort of delegate that power of attorney to people to do that sort of thing for them in terms of concluding these agreements. It must be noted, though, that a power of attorney ceases to exist as soon as a person dies. So if someone has given you a power of attorney and now they die, you cannot now use that power of attorney to go to the bank and try to withdraw money out of the account. That is fraudulent and you can be persecuted by the law for that. So it expires as soon as someone dies and there's nothing anybody can do about it. At this point, it's the executor whose job it is to then now step into the shoes of that deceased person and manage the affairs going on. So that's the power of attorney. All right. Okay. So what happens if you die without your will? So in many cases, this will affect, the theory that we spoke about earlier in terms of leaving your legacy. Your wishes are going to be ignored because you didn't tell us what your wishes are. Your beneficiaries will be determined by the law of interstate succession, as we have spoken about just now. This becomes also very complicated, with blended families where people have perhaps multiple wives and that sort of thing. Distant family members might be the one to inherit your asset, and your executor is also in this case appointed for you as well, because you didn't obviously let us know in a will. So it could be usually anyone that has an interest. So a child, if you have a child that children are a gift from God, but sometimes your child can be wayward or not all the way informed or looking out for their interest only. That person can easily go to the court, of course, with the help of other family members and get a letter of authority, and they're suddenly now in charge of your estate and how to wind it up. So we can, insure against this. Your assets might be sold. This is very important. I know very, very often we do see, deceased estate being sold. Usually these assets are going for very, very cheap. And the reason is because the person has died, they only have hard assets in their estate, and it has to be sold. Because when you die, believe it or not, there are costs that come up. So besides the money that you owe to institutions, whether it's a bank, your credit card, your home loan, all those things, besides those things that you have that you owe, you might also owe money with SARS. So there's debt that happens in death as well. If your estate also happens to be over the value of 3.5 million rand, you're also liable for 20% estate duty. That money needs to come from somewhere. And then also there's also the executives fees that you're also paying. So this is also basically, as an executor, how much you will be charging to wind up that estate. Executors are allowed to charge 3.5 plus VAT, which makes it 4.25%. That money also has to come from your estate as well. So if you find yourself in a situation where you are asset rich but cash poor, so you have many, many homes, you've got many cars, but you don't have any liquidity. What happens when you die then is your assets needs to be sold quickly. So they get sold so that the cash can be obtained to pay out all of these debtors, all of these creditors, so that they can eventually then give your beneficiaries what is owed to them. So that is the cautionary tale there when it comes to estate and your will. So yeah, so in closing, thank you very much, but I would just like all of us to sort of keep that Maslow theory in mind when we make our financial decisions. Do we need that thing that we are trying to get right now? What is the need that we're trying to satisfy? Or trying to satisfy a need of belonging in the community, or is it a basic need that we must satisfy? How far are we pushing ourselves away from our potential by making some of these financial decisions that are not exactly to our benefit? And also, do we have that thing of legacy in mind in terms of eventually when I die, what do I want to be remembered for? So I'd like to just challenge everyone to, when they are doing their financial plan or spending money, to sort of keep this in mind. Thank you. That's all from me for now.
Thank you. Thank you, Nana. Wow. These are issues that I'm sure are affecting the majority of the people that are on this platform. In fact, the issue of selling assets in the areas where we come from, we hear about these cases all the time, and people sometimes expect that because the Department of Justice and so on, maybe you can be able to assist. So when we hear it from the financial point of view, it's really, really assisting, for us to make the right decisions. Given the time that we have, can we perhaps just give a few minutes to Nolo and Jay and see if there are any chats that are related to the current presentation so that we can move to the next presentation. Over to you, colleagues. Nolo,
Thank you,
Jay.
Chairperson. Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, the questions being posed right now are being responded to by the very capable colleague that's attached with Nana. But I think most people tend to have some kind of fear about a will and what happens in the event of my death. From what we can read, most people aren't really sure about the cost implications. I like what Nana spoke about when she mentioned about I may be asset rich but cash poor, and this is when most of the challenges start to occur. And I think this is something that many people never quite take into consideration. And I think it's something that we should start giving greater focus on. So many of the questions right now are pended more towards asking, as a result of what can I do differently? Can one establish a will or a trust at the same time? And people are concerned about what the cost of a trust would be against having a will.
Those are some things that people are concerned about. And one of our colleagues are raising a question, says, how do you keep the cost of the testament trust as a minimum? The testament trust is something that obviously Nala can respond to, but keeping it to a minimum, I'm sure there'll be some favorable response on that. And I think the other thing that comes out clearly is that what happens when I appoint someone in terms of taking care of my responsibilities, and what happens to my money? That's what people are concerned about. Thank you.
Okay, Nana, did you note those? I think Jay took all the questions and summarized them into those few clarity-seeking questions. Are you able to respond, or your colleague?
Okay. All right. So I think the first one that I sort of heard was, in terms of a will and a trust, which one must be picked and which one is best, if I'm not mistaken. So those two address very different things. They work together, but they address very different things. Your will is essentially for your estate, what must happen to your hard estate when you pass away. A trust is not for everyone. I think I need to lead off with that. It's a very costly thing, first of all, to have, but it serves such a great purpose in the sense that it basically makes sure that you have some sort of control on what must happen to your assets through your generations. So you set up a trust now to say, I am leaving all of my assets to my children, and it must go in a certain way. You can say each child must get their capital only when they reach the age of 30, or all the children must wait until the first child reaches the age of 30. You can then dictate, what must happen to those things as and when it's going on. Whereas when you have just the will, you are giving it to the immediate person, and they must determine how they basically pass that asset on. But if you're setting up a trust, you are deciding from now, from where you're sitting, how these assets must devolve through the generation 100 years after you're gone. So that's some of the aspects that a trust serves as different from a will. And then just what was what else needed to be addressed? And how much? So how much is the costs of winding up your estate, correct? Okay. So the cost of winding up your estate, it depends largely on your estate and how it looks like. The main costs that are involved there, it's executors fees, which is 3.5 plus VAT, so 4.25% of the gross value of your estate. So if you have a house that's worth 2 million rand, for argument's sake, and if you still owe the bank 1 million rand on that house, the gross executor's fee is not on 1 million rand, it's on the 2 million. So it's on the entire value of that asset. That is the first cost. The second cost is also then due to SARS. So this is called the estate duty. So that's 20% of your estate. If it's below 3.5 million rand, your estate, SARS is not bothered with you. They will not charge you estate duty. But if it happens to be over the amount of 3.5 million rand, then there will be estate duty involved. And it's very important to sit with a professional, a financial advisor, to try to determine exactly where you stand. Sometimes when people die, monies can come out of, very, very different places where you don't think it's going to accumulate to that, but then it can end up accumulating to that amount of money. And then now suddenly you are due for estate duty. So those are the two main costs when it comes to this. Professionals will charge you anywhere over 500 rand free or 500 rand and above to draft a will. And then there will also be an annual safe custody to keep that will in a safe custody, so that if anything happens to you, your will is readily available to get wound up. We get many people who have drafted some sort of will in their lifetime, but they don't have the original copy of that will. They might just have a photocopy that they made. The master will not accept that. They need a valid will with, pen to paper to say this is original that they're going to end up. So those are the first few costs that are attached to winding up your estate and having a will in place. When it comes to the trust, the reason why the trust becomes very costly is that it's the manner in which you are transferring the assets. So this is not a living trust. Just to not confuse you very quickly, we get two kinds of trust. It's the one that you set up in terms of your will, so your testamentary trust, to say, when I die, all of my assets must be put into a trust for the benefit of my child. That's your testamentary trust. And then you have your interviewable, so that's the trust you have that you're still alive. What makes these trusts expensive is how you are transferring the assets from your personal name into that trust. If you're doing it by way of donation, then of course donations tax would apply. There you're looking at around 20% donations tax. So these are some of the costs that make it expensive. You're also looking at management fees that the trustees are going to charge for that trust. So that's what makes the costs of these trusts expensive.
Okay. All right. Okay. No, thank you so much, Nana. We really appreciate that feedback, and
A pleasure.
we need, to close it at this point, and we appreciate ABSA for making the time to share with us such important information, because when our families are left behind and we did not share the information that is necessary with them, it becomes a struggle. Thank you ever so much. We appreciate you and your colleague. We now need to move to our last presentation, and I note that we have taken almost 10 minutes of Stanley's time, and we are going to allocate Stanley his 30 minutes to actually engage with us, because after understanding all the tax implications and the legislation and understanding the financial aspects of it, at what state of mind are we supposed to be in order to be able to do all these things? So I'm introducing Mr. Stanley Beckett, who is an inspirational catalyst that is committed to empowering individuals on their journey of life in general. Stanley has written a couple of books, Lift Off, The Secret Key of Launching Your Goals, The Change Creators Formula, and the Burnout, that encapsulates the wisdom and expertise that he has gathered over the years. I first heard Stanley's presentation on 702. That's where I first got so interested in this program that actually talks about the formula that can be able to assist us to develop holistically in the life that we lead while we are working, leading towards retirement. So Stanley, over to you. I can see your presentation is already loaded. Like I said, your 30 minutes starts now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I just confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay. Yeah. So hi everybody and welcome. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to address something that's really close to my heart. Because of so many instances I've seen of people getting towards retirement age. And there's a really big part of retiring that people don't consider or don't realize how important it is until that day comes. And I think having this as a reminder that retirement is not just about how much money you have saved up and how well you have planned financially. I think many times we forget how we need to plan and ahead mentally for retirement. So working for many years now in the area of mental health, which I don't know if you know this, but statistically South Africa ranks the third worst country when it comes worldwide to mental health to depression to anxiety and to stress. We experience this in very big way as South Africans, and we don't always know how to address it. And I think one of the first ways, or two of the things that really a big focus for me is on how do we create change. And two of the things that's needed for change is awareness, first of all, and then we need to be able to verbalize it. And I think the same way when it comes to our mental health is that the awareness that mental health affects everybody. And I don't think we always consider, we're so busy focusing on, as I said, as I started, so busy focusing financially on how to protect ourselves when we retire, but we don't always focus on the mental health aspect. What happens to us mentally? What happens to most of us when we go from the phase of suddenly working to suddenly going into retirement? We look forward to it and we're excited about it, but we don't always consider it carefully. And then secondly, how do we talk about it? How do we share it? How do we share what's going on? So I developed what I call the 4-cup system to help people discuss the most important aspects. Another way of seeing it that I'll also use is like a vehicle. You're in a vehicle, you need 4 important things. You need fuel for the vehicle. You need to consider the state the vehicle is in. Is it actually roadworthy? You need to also then consider the engine. In what condition is the engine? And finally, if you're going to be traveling, do you have the right map? Do you know where you're going? So if you can understand those 4 things, you can understand what are the 4 very important things that many people do not consider properly when they go into retirement. And the earlier you start focusing on it, the more you're going to be able to do something about it before it gets to a stage where, as many people find out in retirement, it's just too late. They don't know what to do. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share this with you. And what we're going to do is we're going to start looking at these 4 cups that I call, and we're going to start with the emotional cup. Emotional cup is really your fuel of life. What I want to do is I want to explain to you what do we need each cup for. Then secondly, I'm going to explain what are the symptoms if something is wrong in that area. If we are running on empty, let's use our cup analogy. If that cup is running on empty, what are the warning signs that we need to be taken care of? And then what does it look like for somebody who focuses on keeping the emotional cup full as they go into retirement compared to someone who maybe doesn't do that? And hopefully out of that will be the starting point of lessons for you to take with you and to start thinking about if at the beginning of your working career, you've still got some time to work on it. But all of these cups are things you should, doesn't matter what stage of life you're in, you should always be focusing on keeping full. But especially today, I want to talk to those who are getting towards that retirement age. We're looking forward to it. But too many people have found, unfortunately, that they retire and haven't considered all the things properly. And then the retirement isn't exactly what they thought it was going to be. So let's talk about this emotional cup, your fuel for your car. When do we drink from our emotional cup? Well, as you can see there, we drink from our emotional cups when we need to navigate through the inevitable disappointments that we always experience in life. When we find the frustrations in life, the ego blows, when things don't go quite our way. And when we are pursuing our goals in life, we drink from our emotional cup. It's also what keeps us going when that emotional flame has run out. You know, we love motivation, we love motivational speakers, and we love feeling motivated and uplifted, but that feeling can go very quickly. And it's dependent on how full your emotional cup is. But there's also another very important time when we drink from our emotional cups. And that is when we lose loved ones or when we lose our jobs. And in this instance, going into retirement for many people can feel exactly the same as somebody who's now lost their job. Even though you have financially prepared for the future, it's still suddenly, it's a very big shift. So one day you're needed, you're in demand, people are phoning you. If you don't pitch up for work, people are phoning to hear where you are. The next day, suddenly you find yourself, nobody cares anymore. Nobody phones you anymore. You're not in demand anymore. And so many people are not ready for that shift in their lives. So let me give you an example of how we can prepare for this. But before I do, what are the warning signs? And as we go into the warning signs, I really want to invite you to ask yourself, how many of these things do you currently experience? Right? If you experience any of these, it's a warning sign that your emotional cup might be slightly running on empty. You need to focus on it. So when your emotional cup is running on empty, you will find things like you find that you're physically tired and drained of energy all the time. I'm not talking about you're not getting enough sleep. What you're talking about is that no matter how much sleep you get, no matter how much rest you get, you just feel like you are just tired and drained of energy all the time. The second warning sign for a low emotional cup is that you feel disconnected from others. That's a big thing that people, when they go into retirement, feel. They start feeling this disconnection from people. And sometimes it becomes so big that they unconsciously disconnect from even the people closest to them. Then another warning sign can be, and these are things you might find going into retirement, you go through an emotional roller coaster ride. You go from feeling excited about it to suddenly this fear. And then the next day you feel good about it, and then the next day you feel down about it, right? All signs your emotional cup is being affected. You have it, and this is also a big thing, and why I created a system like this is because you find it difficult to express to other people how you are feeling. Right? Everyone just assumes you're okay, and they don't know how to talk to you about it because you yourself don't even know how to express to someone how scary this thing, because we know we're supposed to be excited about retirement, but it's also a very scary phase of our life if we don't emotionally know how to deal with it. And you can also find things that, like when you're in that space, nothing seems to excite you. Your senses are dulled, food doesn't excite you. There's nothing. You can go through a really big depression if you don't emotionally understand how to deal with it. So I'm going to give you two examples here, right? Well, the first person, Patrick. He's been a regional manager for the municipal services for most of his life. And when retirement hits, he's caught off guard by the wave of emotions that he didn't see coming. And what does he do? He does what us African men do all the time. He bottles up those emotions, saying, what do we always say? Real men don't talk about feelings. And the studies are very clear about how negative it is for us as human beings to have negative emotions that we hold on to, that we don't release. And at some stage, almost like it builds up, it has to be released. But many times, if we don't do so consciously, it's an unconscious release, which is very negative. So here's an example of somebody. He doesn't talk about his emotions. He isolates himself because he thinks, well, people are going to forget about me anyway. So what does he do? In his retirement, he slowly but surely starts isolating himself from other people. He also finds, because of this, he's becoming increasingly irritable in his home. He starts snapping at his wife, the kids, the dogs. All small things are just he snaps at. And it's because he doesn't know how to express how he's feeling. So what he does is he avoids reflecting on his emotions. And what he does is instead he distracts himself with watching television, having long naps. Now, please understand, I'm saying there's nothing wrong with that. But when it's become a distraction is when it starts becoming concerning. You see, Patrick feels emotionally hollow and alone, what he's going through. He swings between anger and sadness, but he doesn't understand why. And it's because his emotional cup is nearly empty. He's not doing anything to keep that emotional cup full. And it leaves him potentially bitter, withdrawn, and vulnerable to depression. Then on the other side of the hand, let's say, for example, we have someone called Nomvula. She's also spent most of her career in a local government department. And as her retirement date nears, she acknowledges that this change is going to bring a mix of emotions. It's going to bring joy, it's going to bring fear, it's going to bring uncertainty, it's going to bring relief, all these different emotions. So what does she do differently? Well, firstly, she gives herself permission to grieve the loss of routine and workplace relationships. We don't often think about that in retirement. It's a grieving process. We have lost a big part of our lives. Yes, we're excited about the next chapter, but we first need to go through the stages of the previous chapter. So she does it in her way. What does she do? She journals and she speaks with a coach. She gets herself a person she can speak to, someone she can talk about her emotions and what she's going through. Secondly, she makes sure that she stays connected with her former colleagues from work. Maybe she does that through WhatsApp groups or through the occasional coffee meetups, but she makes sure that she has connection with people. Third thing that's very important to keep your emotional cup, especially after retirement, full. She finds a hobby, something that uplifts her, something that emotionally makes her feel happy, whether that's gardening. In her instance, she loves gardening. She, for the first time in her life, starts developing and building a beautiful garden, which gives her daily emotional rewards and a sense of she's still growing, a sense of purpose. And when she feels low, she doesn't ignore it. She names it. She says, I'm feeling low today. Giving you the technology, she could say, I'm feeling my emotional cup is empty today. So she gently looks at it and explores, why am I feeling this way? And she works with it. That is what you need to do as a starting point to keep your emotional cup full, especially when it goes through a big life transition like you're going to be experiencing when you retire. Because that's something that is going to happen to all of us. We all have to experience death, taxes, and the third one they leave out is retirement. So the outcome for Nomvula is that because she does this, she starts feeling emotionally anchored and prepared. She's not denying this emotional roller coaster. She's riding it with awareness and with grace. I mean, this whole topic is, how do we retire with grace? Right? Her emotional cup remains full because she fills it with connection, self-compassion, and expression. So those are some of the first things I want you, as you're heading towards the next stage of your life, to consider. How well are you preparing for that? To think about this, that emotional strength isn't about predicting or pretending, that everything is just okay. It's about feeling your way forward, one honest step at a time. Your emotional cup is your fuel, as I said, for life. And it's up to you to make sure that it doesn't run empty and doesn't run dry. Then we go to the next cup. And the next cup is your mental cup. So like I said to you, you've got your car, you've got the fuel. The mental cup is your engine. Your engine has to be purring right. And what happens is many people, when they go into retirement, they forget to look after that engine, and they stop doing the things that make the engine run. And then they wonder why it stops working at the level that it used to in the past. So when we look at what do we need our mental cup is your capacity to focus, to struggle over long periods of time, when you need to be mentally on top of your game. And that just because you've retired doesn't mean that you should be letting that go. So how do we know? What are the signs that maybe your mental cup is not running or is becoming empty? Firstly, if your mental cup is empty, you find it difficult getting quality sleep. So you can sleep, but you wake up every morning. Even some of you at work might be feeling that way right now. You sleep at night, but you don't get quality sleep. You wake up not feeling like you've rested properly. You find that you worry a lot more than usual when your mental cup is empty. Are you finding yourself in that space at the moment? You find it difficult to make decisions when your mental cup is empty. You find that you make a lot of mistakes. You forget things. You make mistakes when your mental cup, that engine is not purring properly in your vehicle, right? You find that you're constantly angry or constantly frustrated, or you seem to zone out a lot. You can sit there and then hours can go by and you can't really tell anybody what happened. It's just like your mental cup is just, you sort of zone out. Now, that's okay when you're going into retirement, but it shouldn't be a natural way for you to be. If it happens now and then, that's one thing. But we should be aware that this is a warning sign. So again, let's take a look at two examples. You've got example, one person, we'll call him Thomas, going into retirement, but he doesn't take the steps to maintain his mental clarity into retirement. So what he does instead, he spends hours scrolling through news or watching TV or watching Netflix, which fills his time, but it doesn't challenge his thinking. He stopped challenging his thinking when he now goes into retirement. That's what so many people do, right? He avoids planning for retirement because it feels overwhelming. So he tells himself the things that so many people do. The reason for today's talk is that we don't do that. He tells himself, don't worry, I'll figure it out when I get there. The time to figure, the Chinese, they have a wonderful saying. They say the best time to plant a tree is 5 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. If you haven't started thinking about this, the purpose of this talk today is to start thinking about these things. Yes, you're thinking about, again, I say what I said in the beginning. You're thinking financially, you're thinking your will, you're thinking all of those things, great. But too many people don't consider these things. How am I going to make sure that I'm mentally strong and going forward when I go into my retirement? For Thomas, he avoids planning for retirement, as I said, and he avoids conversations with family and friends about the future. Why? Because when you talk and when people start asking you, what are you going to do? He becomes anxious, right? Because he doesn't know what he's going to do. He doesn't want to think about it. He's trying to avoid it. So he becomes socially withdrawn. And he starts making more and more mistakes at work, leading into retirement, struggling to concentrate, and he feels constantly frustrated because he knows he isn't planning properly for it. And the outcome is that he's constantly leading into this, which could be a wonderful phase of his life, feels foggy, irritable, and disconnected. Then on the other side, you've got Sipho. Sipho also, he knows he's coming into retirement, and he makes an intentional choice. He says, going into retirement, I'm going to make sure I stay mentally sharp and engaged. So what he does is he signs up for a part-time online course. There's so many wonderful online courses. There's no reason going into retirement why you shouldn't keep learning. One of my best mentors in life, a man by the name of Bob Proctor, to the age of almost 90 when he died. He had more knowledge than anybody I knew, but he was always learning. He was always reading. He was always sharpening his mind. Right? Sipho goes and he journals every morning. He sets small mental goals for himself, like every day I'm going to read one good article, or every day I'm going to solve one good crossword puzzle, or I'm going to do something that keeps me mentally fit. He maybe joins a community mentorship program. That's something I feel very strongly about, and we've spoken about this on Aeon 702 many times. For people who are going to retirement, they still have so much to offer, so much to give. How do we create the opportunities for people like that to be able to mentor maybe younger people and give some of your own knowledge, because it keeps your engine running? And also, he talks openly with his colleagues and friends about the shift. In other words, he gets the support he needs to get people to help him make conscious decisions that keeps the engine running. And because he does that, instead of feeling, remember how Thomas was feeling foggy, irritable, and disconnected, he feels clear-headed, confident, and optimistic about the future. And the takeaway from this one for us all, and that I want you to consider, is that your mind, and please write this in your heart today, your mind doesn't retire when your job does. Right? Again, I say that your mind doesn't retire when your job does. If you want to thrive in this next chapter of your life, you have to choose to keep your mental cup full through learning with purpose and with clarity. And then we move on to the actual vehicle. How are you making sure? So the engine might be great, the fuel might be there, but is this vehicle roadworthy? How are you looking after your physical cup going into retirement? And what do we use our physical cup for? Well, our physical cup in a working environment is what enables us to get past moments of physical pain and fatigue. When you'll find some people retire absolutely gracefully. We don't want to go into retirement and be sick all the time and have physical pain all the time. It's how you work on it today that makes a difference. And I do this often when I'm working with audiences. I tell them, just have a look at your body right now. As you're sitting there, just appreciate your body, who you are. Because for the rest of your life, from this point forward, you are never, ever again going to be as young as what you are right now in this moment. You're only going to keep getting older. So start right now working. If you haven't done anything before, you can't do anything about the past, but you can start today and say, what am I doing daily to keep this vehicle of mine fresh? What am I doing to look after myself? And what is my plan when I go into retirement to look after this vehicle, to make sure that I stay healthy, I stay strong? So again, what are some of the warning signs that tell us that our physical cup might be running on empty? We find it difficult to dig deep, if not even impossible at times. We find it difficult sometimes just to get out of bed in the morning. And when you're in retirement and you've earned this wonderful freedom to live life the way you want to, you don't want to live that every day just finding it difficult to just get out of bed, right? You want to enjoy those moments in your life. If your physical cup is empty, you find that your energy is just constantly low. You find yourself unmotivated to do anything. And very important, you find you've got a low immunity. You're getting sick all the time. And you feel stressed then also all the time for no apparent reason. So again, let's look at an example. We say Dumisani, age 63, worked in procurement all his life. When he goes into retirement, he told himself, you know what, I deserve to rest. And so he did, which you all deserve to rest, right? But because he didn't do it consciously, his rest turns into stagnation. He sleeps late, he skips breakfast, and he spends most of the day watching TV or just sitting. And I don't know if you've heard it before, but they say sitting is the new smoking. We spend so much time sitting that it has as much negative effect on our body as what smoking used to have. Right? And Dumasani, he often feels tired, but he says, you know, that's normal, I'm just getting old. Because he doesn't like hearing bad news, he avoids doctor appointments. He brushes off the small pains and things, and he ignores the signs of chronic issues in his body. And his diet is full of takeaways, full of sugar, full of caffeine, and he doesn't drink much water, and he often feels bloated and heavy. So he's again going to feel in his retirement years, when it should be the time you have worked your whole life for to enjoy, he feels sluggish, he feels stiff and demotivated. He wants to enjoy retirement, but his body is not cooperating. Why? Because his physical cup is dry, leaving him stuck in a cycle of fatigue and frustration. That doesn't have to be the story. Remember, the story we write, what we do today is writing our story for tomorrow. The choices you make today is going to be you of tomorrow. So then we have another person, Mandla, who's also going to retire, and he knows that retirement won't feel like freedom if his body is too tired to enjoy it. So what does he do? He starts already now, even before retirement, he starts walking every morning with a friend. Nothing extreme, just consistent movement added every day to what he's doing. Right? He switches maybe to lighter, more nutritious meals, and he begins to drink more water. Just small little habits that make a big difference going forward. He schedules regular checkups, and he takes his medication seriously, knowing that prevention is always better than cure. And he takes breaks during the day to stretch, to move, and to rest without guilt, learning to listen to his body. So Mandla, he feels energized. He's mobile and empowered. Now he doesn't just have time, he has the health to enjoy that time. In other words, his physical cup stays full through movement, through rest, and through discipline. And the takeaway on your physical cup is that your retirement years should be your reward, not your sentence. If you don't take care of your physical cup, the time that you've earned can feel more like a burden than a blessing going into retirement. Remember, your energy is your power, and you need to protect it. And then the final thing we need to consider when it comes to it, if we take the vehicle, is the map. So many people, this is such a big thing. And once again, people do not consider this properly. And that's your spiritual cup. It's your purpose. It's your reason. It's your why. You are going to potentially find that instantly in a day, you go from having a purpose in life to not really knowing what your purpose is anymore. Now you're retired. Who are you now? What is your life story going to be? So we need our spiritual cups to be full. Our spiritual cups, as you see, it's your spiritual cup to ability to suffer well when you're going through difficult times. But also so important, it helps us to maintain your faith and belief and to stay centered and clear. When you're going into your retirement phase of your life, are you still clear on what your purpose is? Do you have a purpose? Do you have something that gets you to wake up every day and look forward to the day? Right? And it also allows you to transcend and rise above the everyday injustices and hardships and pain and disappointment that people feel. So how do we know that our spiritual cups might be running on empty? What are the warning signs, the warning lights in our car that says the oil is low? What is that for us that says our spiritual cup might be low? You'll find that somebody who's lost that faith and purpose, they attempt to escape reality all the time, watching shows, television, sleeping late. They're not doing it because they enjoy it, but it's because they don't want to have to face what they're going through, right? You find someone with a low spiritual cup has difficulty believing in themselves, believing in their future. They start feeling more and more disconnected from life and from other people. And this is a deep sense of loneliness. You know, it was mentioned earlier on, I've been, for the past 7 years, been doing a show every Wednesday on 702 called Change Your Mindset. And so often we get phone calls from people who are well into the retirement age that express to us how lonely it can be when that spiritual cup is empty and they haven't worked on it, right? You almost get to a dreaded feeling of getting up and just facing the life today. And you can get to a point where you feel like a lack of joy in anything. So let me give you a final comparison. We've got Sizwe, who had neglected his spiritual cup, right? When retirement hits, he's not just losing his job, as so many of us, he's losing his core identity. So many of us don't realize that we don't just lose our job, we lose our core identity. We've got to re-identify who we are now. He never learned to separate from his titles. There's so many people that do. They never learn to separate who they are as a person from the title they've had. So he no longer feels useful, and he often finds himself saying, well, who cares? I'm just a pensioner, right? He has no real spiritual practices, no real reflection, no deeper inquiry, no stillness. The days just blur together. And I know it's like that with my parents who retired for many years, who tell me sometimes they don't even know what day of the week, not even to talk about, sometimes don't even know what month they're in. Everything just seems to blur together. Right? He sees justice and the hardship in the world, watching TV all day, and he feels angry and helpless, believing that he's too old to make a difference. And he withdraws from community and faith activities that he once enjoyed, thinking that they and he himself doesn't matter anymore. So because of this, he's living his retirement days, his spiritual cup empty, feeling disconnected, unanchored, and invisible. And without spiritual grounding, the hardships of life, it just starts to feel heavier. Then we get Grace, who realizes retirement isn't the end. She says it's just a spiritual shift for me in my life towards maybe a deeper alignment with my real purpose. Maybe work is never your purpose. Work is the way to fulfill your purpose. Now she's got the time to really look, what is my purpose still on this planet? So what has she done? She spends time every morning in quiet reflection or prayer asking, who am I becoming now? What a great question to ask as you go into this retirement phase. Who am I becoming now? Who am I choosing to be now as I go into this phase of my life? She volunteers twice a month at a shelter, not for recognition, but because it aligns with her values of service and compassion. She joins maybe a small faith-based group that helps her explore questions of her identity, her aging, and her contribution. And finally, she practices one of the most beautiful things you can do is gratitude. Gratitude, and I wish I had more time to talk about this because there's such a difference between gratitude and thankfulness. Thankfulness is giving thanks for things you already have. Gratitude is giving thanks for things you know is coming. What are you giving gratitude for in this next phase of your life? Can you see it? Are you excited about it? She has that gratitude. She sees the future. She sees her purpose and she looks forward to it. And because of this, she feels at peace. She feels she still has purpose and she feels connected to life. Her spirit is nourished by quiet moments, meaningful actions, and a sense that life still has so much to offer. Her spiritual cup is full, and it shows in her lightness, her hope, and her grace. And you can very quickly, when you are with people, I can immediately spot who has empty cups, who has full cups, and where their cups are. So the takeaway on the spiritual side, and for you to consider, is that your title may change, but your purpose doesn't have to die with your job. When you tend to your spiritual cup through meaning, through stillness, through service or faith, because you have lived a life of service in being in the employment and in the job you are, it doesn't have to stop when you die, right? Or when you retire. Right? If you continue doing that, you will find renewed power to rise above life's transition. So my closing thought to all of you, and I send this with love and well done for those of you who are getting to that stage of retirement. Thank you for what you have given from your life. But now it's time for you to really look after you and give back to yourself. Right? You've given your time, you've given your energy, your life in service to others. And like I said, now it's your time. And remember, retirement isn't the end. It's just a powerful new beginning. But only if you are working and ready to fill your cups, your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. And here's the news and my offer from me. You don't have to figure out it alone. There is a way forward, a way to feel clear, connected, strong, and fulfilled again. I've helped many people do this, and I'd love to help any of you that want it as well, that just need this kind of support going into retirement. And I'll leave you with this final message and a question and a thought for you, that if you don't take care of the next chapter of your life, then who is going to? So with that, I say thank you. I don't know if there's any questions or comments, but I hope that that short time with you has made you think and realize that there are so many things we still need to consider as we're going into retirement. And if you consider these 4 cups, you will be very well positioned to have a happy, healthy, purposeful retirement. So over to you, Bully, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share this with your members today.
Wow. Thank you so much, Stanley. You know, the webinar doesn't have the hands or the claps, or so with each and every presentation, I'm tempted to clap, but now I'm thinking I'll be the only one who's clapping. Thank you so much, Stanley. You know, when we were brainstorming around the webinar, and you know, we had one a sentence that we kept on going back to say, how do you retire with grace? You know, what are the elements that you need in order to say, I will bow out, ready and fulfilled for the next level? So, you know, all these 3 presentations have given us the tools, the knowledge to can be able to make sure that as human beings, we are realistic about what is happening out there. Actually, for me, it served as if, and I think for many as well who are on the platform, it was a beginning of a coaching session for us as one of our senior managers would like to put you know, an interaction of this nature into words, Miss Louise Lepan. I hope she is listening. So I just want to give Jay and Nolo an opportunity to browse through the questions, if there are any, but also Stan, what has been coming up on the platform. People are requesting either your contact details, your website, or any information that you can share on the chat so that people can be able to see the information there, where you indicated as you close that you are open to assist, whether it's departments that are struggling with these issues or individuals, that so that they can be able to contact you. Jay and Nolo, over to you.
Thank you, Sis Bully. Wow, I'm also inclined to clap as well. I think your sentence by being grateful for what is coming to you, that kind of gratitude, it's awesome, because this is an indication of something we started which can only be more to come. So it's actually filling our cups. So Stanley, you're giving me some reflection. Every time I have my coffee, I think about the things I should be grateful for. Like I think everyone else is on this platform. For sure. I mean, the questions clearly are, it's great because people want to be part of something bigger. And it's nice to know that people feel positively about the fact that leaving is something, but having a healthy mind, having an emotional sense of being is what it's all about. So great. It's really excellent. You know, I can't specifically contextualize the kind of positive inputs that are coming from people. Thank you so much, colleagues. People want the presentation should be shared. They're seeking how good it is, how excellent it is, and they're just grateful for something that we've done. And we're humbled by your request and by your responses, colleagues. Thank you so much.
May I just say one extra thing, please?
Yes, then you can go for it.
Just people are asking if they can get a copy of the presentation. Billy, can I arrange with you to get the copy to you, that we can somehow get it to everybody? The second option is I have put my email address and details in there. If somebody wants it, they can also copy me. But I'd like, for those who want a copy of the presentation, I would happily send it through. Okay.
All right. No, thank you very much. We appreciate it. There is the email, the website, the email address is going to be posted there. We have a registration platform that we were managing as we were, administering the event. So I'm sure we will have people's emails where we can be able to share the presentations. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank everybody who contributed. But from my side, my gratitude goes to the presenters that put together such a brilliant webinar for us as a cadet and foundation management chief directorate. It's very clear that we need to reimagine the word retirement. I saw an article the other day. I think it was on MoneyWeb, if I'm not mistaken, where there's a gentleman called Jim Gambone who has written a book called Refirement, A Boomer's Guide to Life After 50. And I told myself that this is one book that I need to read as early as possible, because some of the speakers have already indicated that we live longer. And I think in the blessing of having a longer life, you need to use those remaining years fruitfully for the benefit of all the others that are coming after us. So we are going to continue as Cadet and Foundation Management Chief Directorate to engage our clients on some of these issues. And I would like to say, look out for another smashing webinar that is going to look at details around these issues and open up platforms where we can be able to express ourselves, where we can be able to get more information so that we can be better prepared when we are taking some of these life-changing decisions. So without wasting more time, I'm going to hand the session over to Ntate Ephraim Mekwa, who is going to give us closing remarks, and then we can say goodbye to each other. Ntate Mekwa?
Thank you very much, Sis B. Perhaps before I officially close the session, I wanted to check, because you said earlier there were a number of questions directed at the GEPF. I don't know if maybe there's one or two things that they may want to say that perhaps they were not able to address earlier. If not, then we'll close the session. Can we do that, or maybe should I just close?
No, I think we should do that because we promised. And the two presentations have given them enough time to can look at all the inputs on their presentation. And I'm sure they might want to say one or two answers. Then we can close. Thank you, Ntate Mekwa.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Mekwa. We as the GEPF are prepared to answer any inquiries that the members are posing. Issue being that the platform was not kind to us with regards to us responding in written format. It kept jumping, so we were not able to consistently respond. But if we are given some time, people can answer. My colleagues and I will respond to any inquiries that like my colleague Justice was doing. We can continue just to, yes, we will read the questions and then we will answer. So if we do so, we just need a time allocation. How long can we go, Mr. Mekwa?
You are muted, Ntate Mekwa.
Yeah, I was hoping that it was not going to be a very long thing, because I want to imagine that most of the people who are here are public servants anyway. So maybe the most important thing might be to say, how do they get hold of you, so that you are able to respond to their issues. I'm just looking at the issue of time, so I didn't want us to drag it for too long. I was thinking that maybe if there's one or two burning questions, that you were not able to respond to. Maybe you could respond to those and then say to the people, for further information, this is how you can get hold of us.
Okay. There were two outstanding, which were burning issues regarding the medical aid, specifically. And one was about early retirement. A lot of people were asking about the early retirement, specifically about the age. And I think I'm just going to elaborate on that one specifically. Now, the GEPF, ladies and gentlemen, our official retirement age is 60. That's what we need to know. But the members' exit age is determined with regards to their conditions of service. So if you are under the Public Service Act, you can continue past the age of 60 to the age of 65. You can stop at 60 or 61 or 62, 63, 64, all the way to 65. If you leave before the age of 60, there is a penalty. So anyone who is employed under the Public Service Act, outside of a few educators that were allowed to, their conditions of service allowed them to leave from the age of 50. Everyone else has to leave at 55, but that is early retirement and it carries a penalty. The penalty is calculated thusly. It's 0.333 of a percentage multiplied by the number of months from the date of early retirement to the age of 60. Worst case scenario, if you leave at the age of 55, we multiply that factor of calculation 0.333 of a percentage with 60 months, which will amount to 19.98%. Essentially rounding off, if we round off upwards, it's 20% that we will deduct from your entire actuarial value before even tax or any other allowable deductions come in. Therefore, if the employer instructs, like my colleague Justice Monareng alluded to, if the employer instructs that the GEPF pay you without penalties, we will calculate thusly, and then afterwards, we will send a bill for that liability to your employer to settle that on your behalf. There is one of two actions that you can take or alternatives. There is one where the people are waiting for the National Treasury to finalize the exit without penalties, which is from 55. You can leave through that mechanism, or if that is not available to you yet, or you don't qualify yet, you can also apply to your head of department and say, state your case and say, please take the penalty on my behalf. That is one of two. Therefore, early retirement without penalties is on if you initiate it and request through the HOD, or you can wait for the National Treasury Initiative that was announced by the Minister, Godongwana. That is number one. Yeah? The second one is the medical aid. Medical aid was actually, it was something that was, I spoke briefly on it because of time constraints, and then my colleague elaborated on it. The medical aid subsidy is paid at 75% of the entire contribution by the GEPF post-retirement. That 75% is limited to a maximum rand value of 1,801 rand if it's just yourself on the medical aid. If you have even one dependent, we double the amount to 3,602 rands. You need to be the main member of a registered medical aid scheme, any medical aid scheme, and then you may be subsidized post-retirement. You need 15 years or more on normal retirement. The years don't have to be concurrent. Simple example, you don't even have to have been a contributing member of the GEPF in order to qualify. We require what is called actual government service years. So you may have been on contract, not contributing to the GEPF for 5 years, left and worked in the private sector, and then came back for another 10-year stint. On normal retirement, we will combine those years, so the years don't have to be concurrent in order for you to qualify. On your last day of service, you need to have been the main member of a registered medical aid scheme for 12 months or more in order for you to qualify. That is on normal retirement. But if it happens that you go off on ill health retirement, you require 10 years or more, not necessarily the 15 that is required. So the standard is lowered if you go off on ill health. Therefore, you need to be a member of the medical scheme for 12 months. Otherwise, you will forfeit the medical aid subsidy. Am I forgetting anything?
Yeah, it's one of the
Yes.
beneficiaries.
Oh, yes. The GEPF nomination form does not exclude anyone because of age. Like I said in my presentation, for those of you who came late into the presentation, you don't need to nominate someone who is of a certain age. You can nominate a child, you can nominate your 90-year-old grandfather if you wish to do so. They will get the money. So there's no age limit when it comes to nominations. I hope I'm clear there. There is no such thing that if my child is over the age of 21, if I nominate them, they're not going to get the funds. Again, another misnomer. People say, and I read one of these questions, someone saying, is it possible for me to nominate my spouse for less than 10%? If you wish to exclude your spouse altogether from your nominations, you may do so. There is no act or any sort of hindrance that stops you from excluding your spouse altogether. I'm not saying it's a good idea for you to do so. I'm just saying that you are not forced by any prescript to nominate your spouse. But please understand, in the same breath, there is something called dependency, financial dependency. There's actually an act that speaks to that. So your spouse is somebody that can normally produce proof that they were financially dependent on you. Even if you exclude them and they challenge the nomination form, they will receive that money as long as there is proof of financial dependency. This does not only speak to a spouse, but anyone that is financially dependent on you. And to be blunt, I'm talking to everyone here because we are adults. You need to know that anyone that can give us proof that they were financially dependent on you at the time of your passing will be able to claim a portion of your pension. And yes, that person that you are with on the side, outside of your marriage, that nephew that you are taking care of on a monthly basis, as long as there's proof of financial dependency, they will have a claim on your pension. And yes, that is the end of the GEPF's contribution. Thank you so much for allowing us again.
Okay, thank you very much, colleagues. At this point, I think I must do what I was asked to do, which was to thank, on behalf of the leadership of the School of Government, Professor Naweni and the top leadership, and in particular on behalf of our Chief Director for Cadet and Foundation Management, Dr. Izzy Mangaliso Malachi. I want to appreciate and thank the team that put together this particular very important webinar. It is not easy. I know how difficult it is, the logistics around these things. Let me also appreciate the speakers, the presenters, starting with Obakeng, very detailed presentation about GPEF. And I think what became very clear from that presentation is that as government employees, as contributors to GEPF, we are in very good hands. But that is also going to depend on how we treat GPF. GPFS is going to be as good to us as we are good to it. If we are going to keep on cashing up, every time we move from one position to the next, moving from one department to the next, you keep cashing up, enjoying the money now, then, you are going to suffer the consequences later in your life. Nana said to us, think about what is it that you want to do when you retire. So if your planning starts with saying, what do I want my life to look like when I retire? Then you'll be able to take into cognizance all the other things that Penley spoke about, right? Physically, what must I look like? Must I have a six-pack like Ndate Megwa and be as physical, as active as he is? Mentally, must I be as sharp read and do all these kinds of things to prepare yourself so that when that time comes, you are ready. But the colleagues have also said to us, much as you may have all these financial savings that you are making and so on, you must also think about what if something happens with my life, right? How must my savings take care of the people that I shall be leaving behind? I think I want to take this opportunity, colleagues, to thank you very much. I think we have learned a lot. That brings us to the end of our webinar. Like Sis B has said, we will continue to organize these kinds of sessions, bringing people together. That's our mandate. Our mandate is to train and or cause training to happen, but also to create spaces where people are able to come together, to share ideas, to share knowledge, to learn from each other, to network and so on. Already, some have asked for contact details of Stanley, some have asked for contact details of Nana, some for Obageng. That is networking. And then you'll be able to take the discussions forward in your own spaces. But as a School of Government, we also want to commit that we will also do our part with the resources that we have, in the spaces that we have, to keep bringing people together. On that note, I want to say thank you very much. Have a good day going forward. Thank you very much, Sisbi.
Thank you, Ntate Mekwa. Colleagues, the session has come to an end, and we wish you the best of this afternoon. And let's keep watching this space for another webinar that is going to be exactly the same as we had today. Thanks to you. Goodbye.
Goodbye, colleagues. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Goodbye.